Welcome back to CIA Declassified. The story of Project Penguin does not begin in a lab, but in a state of institutional terror within the Central Intelligence Agency's Office of Technical Services, OTS. In the early 1970s, the intelligence community was rocked by intelligence suggesting the Soviet Union had achieved a Kirlian breakthrough. To the layperson, Kirlian photography was a fringe curiosity. To the CIA, it represented a potential bioelectric polygraph that could render American deep cover assets transparent to Soviet interrogators. The primary source for this panic is document CIA RDP 96-00787. R000500090007-0. This report detailed the Soviet bioplasmic theory, the idea that every living thing is surrounded by a structured field of energy that reflects its internal psychological and physiological state. The agency feared that if a spy was lying, their aura would change color or intensity, detectable by Soviet sensors at border crossings or during routine interviews. This led to the immediate authorization of Project Penguin, a multi-million-dollar effort to determine if the soul could indeed be photographed, and more importantly, if the photograph could be weaponized. To investigate these claims, the agency turned to the Stanford Research Institute, specifically Dr. Harold Puthoff and Russell Targ. Their task was to strip away the mysticism of the aura and find the hard physics. The Penguin files detailed the construction of massive high-frequency spark generators. These were not off-the-shelf components. They were custom-engineered devices capable of generating pulsed electrical fields between 20,000 and 100,000 volts at frequencies reaching into the megahertz range. The research focused on cold emission. Unlike a standard light bulb which produces light through heat, a Kirlian discharge is a cold plasma. The SRI team spent months documenting the interfacial dielectric breakdown. They analyzed how different gases in the air, nitrogen, oxygen, and argon, became ionized when a human finger was placed on a photographic plate within the field. The declassified logs show an obsession with the streamer effect, the way the electrical discharge branches out like lightning. They believed these branches held a mathematical code for human emotion. Perhaps the most controversial and deeply researched aspect of Project Penguin was the phantom leaf experiment. In these tests, a portion of a living leaf was surgically removed. When the remaining piece was photographed using high-frequency discharge, the resulting image often appeared to show the entire leaf, including the missing section. This led CIA analysts to a radical hypothesis: the holographic theory of biological memory. If a leaf remembered its missing parts electrically, did a human brain remember secrets in the same way? Extensive technical papers within the Penguin archive discuss whether the bioenergetic body was a template for the physical body. If true, the agency realized they could potentially read the residual electrical signature of a document a spy had read, or a location they had visited, simply by analyzing the lingering ionization around their person. This section of the research consumed nearly 2 years of trial and error involving thousands of high-resolution photographic plates and vacuum chamber experiments to rule out simple atmospheric interference. As the project matured, the focus shifted from detection to bioelectric offense. If a human being is an electrical system, can that system be jammed? Declassified memos under the header Field Effects and Behavioral Modification explore the use of tuned high-frequency fields. The agency investigated whether projecting a specific frequency could induce, quote, artificial anxiety or, quote, cognitive dissonance in a target. This research was a direct response to the Moscow signal, where the U.S. Embassy in Russia was being bombarded with low-level microwave radiation. Penguin investigators looked into high-voltage psychoacoustics, the idea that a modulated electrical field could vibrate the fluid in the inner ear or the neurons in the brain to create the voice of God effect, or simply to incapacitate a target without leaving a physical mark. The files contained exhaustive charts on human resonance frequencies, mapping out which voltages caused nausea and which caused a breakdown in logical thought process. If the Soviets were deploying Kirlian detectors, the CIA needed a cloak. A significant portion of the Penguin budget was diverted into material science for bioshielding. This involved the development of conductive fabrics woven with microscopic silver, copper, and lead fibers. The goal was to create a garment that would act as a Faraday cage for the human aura. Testing logs show CIA guinea pigs wearing these suits while being subjected to 50,000-volt fields. The engineers were looking for a way to ground the human electrical signature so that it would appear neutral on Soviet sensor. They experimented with active cancellation systems, small battery-powered devices hidden in a belt that would emit a counter frequency to wash out any stress-related changes in the wearer's corona. The technical challenge was immense: how to shield the electrical field without making the spy look like they were wearing a medieval suit of armor. After nearly a decade of research, the clinical evidence for Project Penguin began to erode. In a series of devastating internal memos from 1977 and 1978, OTS skeptics began to point out the variables of deception. They discovered that the Kirlian aura was not a map of the soul, but a map of skin response, sweat specifically. Every time a subject felt stress, they produced microscopic amounts of sweat. This moisture increased the conductivity of the skin, which in turn changed the brightness and color of the electrical discharge. The phantom leaf effect, which had served as the project's holy grail, was eventually debunked as a result of residue contamination, moisture from the original leaf left on the glass plate before the cut was made. The holographic memory was in fact just a wet fingerprint. The final technical evaluations concluded that Kirlian photography was simply a very expensive, very beautiful, and very unreliable way of measuring how much a person was sweating. Despite the scientific failure of the core premise, Project Penguin was not shut down in the traditional sense. It was absorbed. The infrastructure of high-frequency research and the relationship built with SRI provided the foundation for the psychic spy programs of the 1980s, known as Grill Flame and Stargate. The agency realized that even if the science was bunk, the threat of the science was a powerful tool. If the Soviets believed the Americans could photograph their thoughts, they would act differently. This strategic deception became the final phase of Penguin. The project shifted from a search for biological truth to a campaign of psychological warfare, intentionally leaking progress reports on bioenergetic weapons to keep the KGB chasing ghosts and wasting their own research budgets. Today, the Penguin files remain partially redacted, particularly the sections concerning remote sensing of biological signatures. While we no longer use Kirlian cameras, the modern world is filled with their descendants. Every time a thermal camera detects a lie through periorbital heat, or a laser microphone detects a heartbeat through a window, it is walking the path blazed by the high-voltage pioneers of the OTS. The project stands as a monument to a specific era of Cold War history, a time when the boundary between science and magic was blurred by the sheer weight of nuclear anxiety. It reminds us that in the world of intelligence, a beautiful lie is often more persistent than a cold, hard truth. The Penguin didn't fly, but it taught the agency how to look at the invisible, a lesson they never forgot. The search for the invisible did not stop with the aura. As the agency realized the limits of biological energy, they turned their attention to the limits of physical scale. In the same era as Penguin, the OTS was perfecting the insectohopter. Based on document CIA RDP 90, G01353, R001, 2001, 00001-8, we move into the world of microengineering. This was the development of a gas-powered miniature dragonfly drone, a machine so small it could vanish against a summer sky while carrying a high-fidelity microphone into the heart of a Soviet embassy. We begin our investigation into the mechanical swarm by looking at the watchmaker precision required to build a flapping wing engine in 1974, more than 40 years before the modern drone. In the meantime, I'll see you in the archives.